Kenya, as it has been mentioned, perhaps our individual decision on the Israel-Palestine relationship might easily be genuinely concerned with our national security interests. But then how do we balance them with the context, the environment in which we're operating with a long history? So how do we appear that we want to be the champion of African affairs, the leader of Pan-Africanism, and we're not just doing that for image, it also helps you achieve your national interests and protect them if you appear to be the leader and the top of African interests. But the decisions we are making, we are really struggling that on one side we are carrying the book of the champion of Pan-Africanism and African interests, but on the other side we are appearing very transactional and raw power for individual interests. And this is seen in terms of how we are aligning. We talked about that earlier, that even in our own, I think that's my perspective, I've written about that, that in our own view that we deploy in Haiti, we are doing it in solidarity with people of African origin. But then how we did it, it looks like the hovering shadow of the Western powers, the US, is on our neck.
Right.
You look at now our decision that we are doing in as much as it may be for our own national interest, as Prof. Nene is saying, but then the packaging and messaging that we are doing, already information within the social media and elsewhere, is that we are doing that because we are proxy of the US. So the biggest immediate struggle now for Kenya in its foreign policy, and I think with the new minister who has a bit of clout, Musalia Mudavadi, should be first to see how we can correct and deconstruct this emerging perception that we are proxy state, we are vassal state, we are no longer an anchor state, or as we were even saying, that we are moving to be a core state in the region, but we are now doing everything on behalf of another powerful state. And our interests appear to be at the back burner.
Right.
So that is the perception that we must struggle with, even as the realignments happen within the Palestine and Israel war. Just to finalize this, Zainab.
Right.
If you look at the Ukraine conflict, I think Africa slightly performed well. We remained very restrained. In fact, despite the push by Joe Biden and the world, every time there was a meeting with African leaders, the West was asking, what's your position on Ukraine? And Africans were answering well and saying, we do not want to be drawn.
It took a neutral position.
Yes, neutral position, and opposition is have peace and respect sovereignty, like that. But then we shouldn't allow, this time again, another conflict elsewhere there again, to ask Africa that take a position. Africa's position should be that of its history. We were colonized, we were oppressed, we have suffered slave trade, we have suffered terrorism, and therefore anything that contradicts that and anything that violates international law is what we are against.
But it will still go back to what Professor Munene was saying, that then you have also individual national interest, which will then supersede that, which then if perhaps a state would feel aligned to for example, Israel, and because of the military ties that they share, then they would take that position. So perhaps you can see it in that way?
Yes, you know, it is a maxim. When we teach students, the first statement in international relations, according to the realist theory, is that states pursue their own interests, and that's why they are there. The reason for the states, there is no free lunch in the international system. But in practice, even we tell them all states are sovereign and equal, but in practice, is that the case? So their national interests, I agree 100% with Prof here, that what drives you is your national interest. But even as you are pursuing them, ask yourself that what other elements within my environment, that's where geopolitics comes in, will affect my national interest. You can, African states and developing states do not have the muscle to be like the US, which says that their national interests are perpetual and they are crude. They cannot change. It is you to change your interests to suit their system. We have to do a lot of balancing and rebalancing.